Trump administration is drafting an executive order that could lead to the end of the U.S. Education Department. Daily News Team's Ethan Kramer joins us live in studio with more on what this could mean. Ethan.
Yeah, good evening, Justin. The proposed order is expected to call for the Secretary of Education to submit a proposal that would dismantle the department. Now, President Donald Trump is also expected to urge Congress to pass legislation that would shutter the department. This isn't the first time the U.S. has tried to either abolish the department or merge it with another agency. The news of the proposed executive order comes a day after it was reported that dozens of Education Department employees were placed on administrative leave. The end of the Education Department was one of Trump's campaign promises. During his campaign, he said the department had been infiltrated by radicals and Marxists. Trump has said the department's power should be turned over to schools and states. It's important to remember during the first Trump administration, an attempt to cut the DOE's budget failed, and the Republican-led Congress ended up providing more funding. Now, tomorrow, I am working to speak with legislators and local universities to find out what this could mean for Minnesota and North Dakota. Make sure to be on the lookout for that tomorrow. Justin.
All right, thank you.